So the question to ask when Donald Trump nominates somebody for any position is, could it possibly get worse? And the answer is almost inevitably yes. Because we can go from incompetent and unprepared, like Mr. Pete Hegseth, who's completely unprepared to run something as large as the Department of Defense, to Mr. Big Boy Shoes Ron DeSantis, who is a governor who has a significant amount of relevant experience. Now, again, I say this is worse than Pete Hegseth because of Ron DeSantis' competence. Ron DeSantis has shown authoritarian tendencies for his entire time as governor of Florida. In fact, this guy recently started his own militia. Ron DeSantis restarted the Florida Guard, which should not be confused with the National Guard, which is an actual military unit. Ron DeSantis started just in the last couple of years the Florida Guard, which would be a paramilitary force that gets military training that he would be able to deploy not just in his state, but wherever he wanted to send them, and they only answer to him. Now, the supposed justification for creating the Florida Guard was to respond to things like, climate emergencies. He wouldn't call it that. But a big part of the reason that he and Republicans wanted it was to respond to things like the Black Lives Matter movement. Anyone who watches Fox News has been convinced that there are buses full of Antifa that are just always at the gates. They're always outside the city ready to come in and cause chaos. So Ron DeSantis, being a military veteran and being a fascist, wanted to create his own little paramilitary force, and he got it. And if you want to know more about his militia, please go to SPLC's Hate Watch, and you can search for my name, and this article will come up where we talk about why this militia movement that Ron DeSantis has created with government resources is such a dangerous move. Though the mainstream press kind of displays Ron DeSantis as your everyday Republican, he's not just a Republican. The guy's a fascist. As the SPLC explains, he has been using his power as Florida governor to intimidate voters. He's been sending out police to go investigate people who signed petitions in favor of women's reproductive rights. He has specifically targeted Black people who have voted, who he believes shouldn't have the right to vote. And as governor, he picked a fight with one of the most economically important corporations. Not a giant fan of Disney, but he did it because they had been promoting equality for all genders and sexualities. And part of my concern, as I expressed for this article written a year ago, again, you can check this out at SPLC, is how by Ron DeSantis creating a militia for himself and uniforming them this way, it's granting legitimacy to other unlawful militias that are completely outside of control of the government. And we have already seen movements like the constitutional sheriffs, coming out and basically saying, hey, we want to be deputized by Tom Homan, the incoming, deportation czar. So I'm glad to see Hegseth getting out of the picture here, maybe. But I am very concerned about DeSantis because, again, the competence thing and the experience is frightening. In his embrace of private militias, which is what his Florida Guard is for him, it's his private militia, really sets, I think, a disturbing precedent nationwide. And he, as the Secretary of Defense, would likely encourage this kind of formation of militias across the country. So listen, I don't want to be all doom and gloom. I do want to leave you with some hope. We know one thing, and that is the best way to fight fascists, the best way that the everyday person can fight fascists is through ridicule. And we already know where this man has a soft spot. We know that his legs aren't this long. mean, he made it clear during his failed presidential campaign. Remember, he tried to run against Trump. It was very clear that these types of stories about his little boosters here really got under his skin. So we should take this person very seriously. He poses a big threat, and as Secretary of Defense, will pose an even greater threat to democracy. And we as Americans, as citizens, as voters, need to use all of the tools that we can to undermine fascists wherever we can. And in this guy's case, it's simply just talking about his boots. And we should put it in a context that we know he and his fans are going to be really, really sensitive about. We know that this man has a genuine level of hate for the LGBTQ community. And for all that hate, we can exploit the things that he's sensitive about. Ron DeSantis wears boots because he does not feel manly enough, these booster boots. I think it's fair to say, it is accurate to say that he is engaging in gender-affirming self-care. He is presenting himself in a way that affirms the gender that he does not feel secure enough in. And we should highlight very clearly the irony of this man using props to affirm his gender. And when we do so, we make it very clear that we know why we are saying this. It's because that we think that gender-affirming care and that people dressing in a way that makes them most comfortable because it reinforces who they are, that we believe this is okay. So we should support Ron DeSantis' booster boots. And we should do so lovingly, because that's what's going to get under his skin the most. And if we can get in a fascist's head, we can keep them busy. Keeping them busy in their own mind is imposing a cost on them. So let's just be a little mean in the most loving way that we can. If he does end up getting nominated as Secretary of Defense, I have no doubt that he will be confirmed. He does not have the scandals that Pete Hegseth does that puts him at risk. In fact, I think there are probably a bunch of Democrats who would vote for DeSantis. So let's just prepare ourselves to show this man some love and support. Every time he is in public, we just talk about how we're so proud of him, because that love and support will drive him nuts. And if he's busy thinking about that, he'll be just a little less effective. And that may feel like a small thing, but these small things add up. And we know that Donald Trump doesn't really like Ron DeSantis because Ron DeSantis stepped up and ran against him. And if every time Trump reads or hears about Ron DeSantis, he hears about it in the context of people making fun of his boots, his little booster boots, that's going to make Trump insecure too. And it might encourage him to make another pick. And that kind of instability, as important as our defense is, it will undermine their attempts to erode democracy here in the United States through improper use of the military and through encouragement of unlawful militias. So, again, this may sound silly, but it's not. Poking fun, ridicule is an effective tool against fascists. That's what history shows us. And we use every tool that we can to fight fascists.